Sherpa is strong people too, I would say. And most of the Sherpa people lives only the very high part of Nepal. And most of the Sherpa people climbs mountains.
If you live in an industrial nation, a Sherpa guide may not be the first person that comes to mind when you think of intelligence. And yet, this humble mountaineer keeps people alive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. And intelligence certainly plays a role in this ability. But for many people, the image of intelligence brings to mind an individual with great analytical skills. NASA research scientist Sandy Lozito fits that description.
Some of the work that I do here at NASA involves looking at communications for pilots and controllers in what we call the National Airspace System, basically the airspace that we all fly in, at least in this country. Currently, those communications are primarily handled, for example, when a controller gives a flight crew an instruction to turn or climb, are primarily handled through the voice channel, through VHF type communications. The FAA and some other users like the airlines are interested now in trying to move to new technology because there's a basic frequency congestion problem in the voice communications. So my job in that is to try to look at the feasibility of the technology, but more specifically to look at what kind of new problems may be introduced if you move to that technology.
So what do we mean when we say a person is smart or intelligent? Psychologists have studied this question for more than a century. Yet there are many different opinions on what constitutes intelligence and what is the most effective way to measure it.
The way that David Wexler defined intelligence is the global capacity to think rationally, to act purposefully, and to deal effectively with the environment. And if you look at that as a definition, you can see that that actually covers quite a bit of ground in what we think of in terms of what is intelligent behavior. Whether you're talking about how to, fix your car, or which college courses to take, or what kind of term paper to write. All of those types of activities are marked by intelligence. They're all examples of how we use intelligence every day.
With this in mind, it's easy to see how Wexler's definition of intelligence could be applied to people from widely varying backgrounds, such as a Sherpa or a research scientist.
When I conduct my research, I definitely have to have problem-solving skills, especially when I am involved in a large-scale simulation study, because those tend to involve a lot of different organizations, which means that along with having a lot more resources that you can rely on, you have a lot more problems that are introduced.
We have to know to take people to the high altitude. The biggest skill we have to know is about altitude sickness. And as much as we can, the medical things, that's very, very important. And we need to know very important thing about, take care a bit about food. That's very important. And when people get a little bit, poison from food or get sick a little bit, people cannot get admitted to where they wanted to go. And the other thing is, the transportation about the gear, what they wanted to take this gear. So we have to support and we have to help for them to take up. So these things are very important for guide.
I believe that there are universal aspects of intelligence, namely certain mental processes. So for example, the scientist and the Sherpa guide in their lives have to recognize problems, figure out if there's something wrong. It's looking at perhaps the plans for a rocket and seeing, is this really going to take off? The Sherpa guide has to do the same thing. He or she is entrusted with guiding people on very difficult terrain, and it's a life or death matter. The guide has to recognize if there are potential weather problems or problems in terms of the navigation that will make it implausible to keep going. So recognizing the existence of a problem is key.
I was in the north side from Tibet climbing with a British guy. We were trying to go to the summit to two of my clients, and we went about almost half of the way. And the other my clients was really cold. Get bad, all the ice and everywhere in the face and hard time to walk. And I just look at it back, and big storm is coming right behind us, and I feel like the snow, was dropping, and I said, this is not a good idea to go up, and we turned back. That day, 3 Indian guys was died on the way, because I think they made it to the summit, but on the way back they couldn't make it to the camp. So we didn't make it to the summit, but we came by life.
Finding a definition of intelligence that fits people from different cultures is one thing, but how effective would Wechsler's test be in assigning an IQ score to people who live in totally different worlds, such as a research scientist and a Sherpa? Since most scientists have strong reading and writing skills, the scientist would probably do well on the test. The Sherpa, however, would be a different story.
The Sherpa would probably have a more difficult time because his or her experience would be more in terms of practical intelligence, bodily kinesthetic, hands-on intelligence. How do I deal with this type thing, as opposed to drawing from traditional intelligence or what a traditional IQ test reveals, that is, information that you learn in school.
If the Sherpa were to do poorly on the WAIS test, does it mean that he lacks intelligence? Not at all. It does, however, reveal an inherent shortcoming of all intelligence tests.
There are a lot of cognitive abilities, intellectual abilities, that are central to functioning in society that are probably not well measured by those tests.
Why are the different forms of intelligence so difficult to measure? Robert Sternberg has a theory.
Analytical intelligence, the kind that is measured by things like IQ tests, SATs, ACTs, GREs, the whole alphabet soup, I don't think that is terribly hard to measure. And what's happened is that scientists and others tend to go for the easy things. So because it's kind of easy-ish to measure, they put a lot of attention to measuring it. But the cost of that is that the people in the field of testing haven't tackled what I think are the really hard problems, like how do you measure whether someone's creative? We try to do that. So what we'll do is things like ask them to write a short story, or we might ask them to do a piece of art. So you can measure creativity. It just takes a little bit more creativity on the part of the tester.